All right, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to the stew. We've got a pretty good, solid lineup of topics to talk about today. A lot of stuff going on in the NBA and NFL world, and we're excited to dig into it.
Let's get to it.
So let's get to it. The very first thing that we have on the docket today is James Harden just got issued a $100,000 fine for the comments that he said while in Japan, China, yeah, wherever it was that he was. Big fine for the comments that he said about Daryl Morey.
Warranted or not, in your opinion?
Yeah, so for me, the biggest thing that I have now is there's definitely like player power in the NBA is definitely getting crazy.
All-time high.
And we're going to talk about going to more in depth about the Dame trade later, but the fact that he was going out and telling teams, don't trade for me because I won't play for you, like that's too much. You're contracted to play for that team, so you can't necessarily just not play for that team.
That's becoming a huge problem in the NBA. Guys signing 5-year contracts and wanting out after a year or two after they signed a contract, and then putting the teams in a pinch by demanding a trade to a certain location when most instances the teams that they want to get traded to do not have the assets that the team they're trying to get traded from would like. So Dame, for example, wants to only play for the Heat, but the Heat don't want to give up too much for an older Dame, which is understandable. But yeah, going back to James Harden, I think $100,000 isn't really much to James Harden, but to be fair, but that's a significant fine in the grand scheme of things for what was said. He just called his GM a liar. I think it was warranted just because it's a really bad look on the NBA. It's a bad look on Harden even. But I think he's at the point where the connection is so lost between Daryl Morey and James Harden, because I'm assuming he took a pay cut last year and Morey told him that they'd sign him, give him a max, and he didn't play like a max player last year, so they don't really want to lock up all of that cap space with an older, aging, out of his prime Harden. He's still, one of the best players in the league, but they don't want to tie up their cap space. And I mean, they have a lot of other issues that they got to work out. But I think that rubbed Harden the wrong way so bad that he's like, nah, I don't want to play for y'all at all. Like, trade me now. And I think he's going to the extremes to try to get out of there. He's like, yeah, I'll take a $100K fine if I can go play where I want to play. Like, in his head, I'd imagine. I mean, $100K isn't really anything. But this whole situation is a little getting out of hand.
To say the least. So you mentioned that it was because he took the pay cut in hopes of, or because there was a kind of under the deal handshake that he was going to get a big contract. So I've also seen reports that he was promised to get traded after he opted in to his player option for this last year. He was told by Daryl Morey that he would get traded quickly after he opted into his, but then at some point from now and at that time when he opted in, it came out that he can stay. We're okay with it being rough. Like, if it's going to be awkward here, we'll deal with it.
Yeah, that's a really tricky situation. Like, you can't really tell a player one thing and then not do it. So I completely understand where he's coming from. But, I mean, the NBA is a business, and you can't just rely on handshake deals. So, I don't know. We'll see how this plays out. But I think 100K fine, it makes sense. It's a little steep, but it is what it is.
So I guess let's dig deeper into the Dame situation now. He definitely wants out of Portland, especially after he said he wants to win a championship, and then they went and kept the pick and kept Scoot. But now he just wants to go to Miami, and Miami really can't afford to bring him in.
They can. They don't want to. They don't want to give up what Portland wants them to give up. So exactly. I think it's just so ironic how Dame has always been he never wanted to win a ring. He just was content with making a max contract, just making the dollars in a small market like Portland. And now all of a sudden, towards the end of his career, now he's stirring up all this trouble, trying to get traded, demanding trades to a one team, one team. So I think it's kind of crazy, and I think it's super ironic, like I said, and it's kind of like everyone's always loved Dame because he's always been so unproblematic, and he's just one of those dudes in the NBA that everyone loves, and he's kind of like, I'm not saying ruining his legacy because his legacy isn't crazy. I mean, he's been one of the best players in the league for a long time, but he definitely is ruining his perfect image per se.
It bothers me how we went from one extreme of I'm never gonna leave, like I want to stay in Portland, to
Another extreme.
you can trade me, but only here, and I'm not gonna show up to training camp if you don't trade me, and if you trade me to somewhere else, I'm not gonna play for them. Like there's no middle ground in there at all. Like
Isn't that ironic?
like, okay, if you just take me to a contender, we can make this work. But instead, it's like it's got to be this team with these people. You can't let them trade this to us because I want to play with. Like it's way too much.
Yeah, like most trade demands in the NBA, they'll select multiple teams to give your team the best odds of getting what they want in return for you. Even though it's not really a good thing to demand a trade to certain teams. At least multiple teams helps out a little bit. Dame's asking for a singular team. And like we were talking about earlier, I think that NBA players have more power than they ever have ever in the history of the NBA. It's really becoming a players' league, which isn't a terrible thing, but it is. Off seasons are starting to become more and more dicey every year because it's like it's getting trickier. Plus, it's kind of helping if your team. I guess I can't think of an example off the top of my head, but like say a player wants to get traded to a singular destination. Like, okay, if I'm not gonna give up what you want me to give up, and I mean, is the team that you're trying to get traded from just going to take the L and you're just going to sit out all season? Or are they going to trade you to that team for a bag of chips? So it's like a team could get lucky and become Chris Paul. Okay, well, Jordan Poole and Chris Paul. I'm kind of going on a tangent. You might have to cut this out.
No, you're good.
I'm trying to think where I was going with that. What was I going to say? Not Chris Paul. Bradley Beal. Like Bradley Beal, who did Washington get for Bradley Beal? Chris Paul. Okay, so like I was saying, like Chris Paul for Bradley Beal is such a like lopsided trade because I guess Bradley Beal has a huge contract, but he's way better player right now than Chris Paul is, and then Chris Paul gets traded for Jordan Poole. I don't know. A lot of things, it's just getting a little weird. Like, I feel like some of the trades that we've been seeing aren't really mathing out. But I know it's kind of contract issues and stuff like that. But it's insane to me that the Suns managed to get 4 max players on their roster at the same time. The Lakers got 2.
It's about to be I think the way contracts are done in the NBA are about to be a problem because signing really good players, Kevin Durant, James Harden, Dame, to long-term contracts, and then them just requesting a trade and then like doing the James Harden fat suit and just playing so poorly that you basically have to let him go.
Yeah, I mean,
like what's the point at that point of even signing guys to long-term deals anymore?
Yeah, exactly. Well, here's the thing. The players wouldn't let that happen because they need financial security. So NBA teams can't just be like, okay, y'all are not getting 5-year contracts anymore because the players, there was a lockout. I don't know if you remember, but NBA players will sit. But I think we'll be starting to see more and more clauses in contracts, such as cannot demand a trade, stuff like that. That might become more common because right now there's trade clauses for a player that says you can't trade me unless I say you can. But I think teams are going to start putting that into contracts, and I don't know. Something's got to change.
There's got to be something to protect the organizations more.
Yeah.
Because It's in the contract that the player has to play for that team. They don't have to trade you if you request a trade. But if you're going to choose to sit out or just be a problem, then you're giving the organization no choice but to trade you.
I think the NBA might have to implement some sort of, I don't know, I don't want to say rule, but if a player is sitting because they haven't been traded, like they shouldn't get.
That's what they did to Ben Simmons. He tried to sit.
They came to an agreement and he got part of the money that he was owed. I think he got like 60-40 or 50-50, but which is crazy because I've never even seen that happen before.
If I didn't show up to work for 3 weeks, they would pay me $1.
He got paid tens of millions of dollars to be on the sidelines. So, I mean, he still got his bag. But, yeah, it's becoming tricky.
Let us know what you guys think the next big change for these contracts and stuff like that's going to be, because something's going to give here.
And what they could implement realistically.